Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I think this is a pretty special festival to be talking at. The Chrysler built, or the Chrysler factory as it used to be, now it's turned into a bespoke manufacturing festival here, so big business is kind of dying and the smaller kind of community stuff's opening up now for more local manufacturing, and I think that's really great. This talk in kind of two parts. I'll talk about how I kind of, I suppose, got to do what I do now, which is related, or it's been from a couple of decisions I made when I was a little kid to do the work I do now, and then I'll also run through some of the props which I made for Mad Max, which are sitting in front of you here. Okay, I'll get into it. As a creative, you kind of have to have a lot of different arrows, I suppose, in your bow. I've had lots of different titles and lots of different jobs over the years. This is a list of some of them. And I always find it kind of difficult to explain what I do to some people, but I suppose the easiest way to explain it is if you want something made that you can't buy in a shop, then you would hire someone like me to make it. And in the film industry, it's a great industry to be involved in for me because there's a continual flow of new projects coming onto the market. So there's a constant need for creativity, which is where I've found my niche. A lot of other businesses out there require creativity only for a small amount of time, and then they don't need you anymore. With the film industry, because it's constantly changing, there's new stories to be told all the time. I've found that I've found my little spot. But in fighting my way to be there, I've done lots of different things over the years. And I suppose it's important to keep in mind if you are planning a career in the film industry, that you don't always get there by the route that you may have imagined. I've gone around about in lots of different ways. This is a little bit about my grandfather. When I started thinking about what I was going to do for work, I spoke to my grandfather, and I said, I was doing card tricks with my grandfather because I always loved magic as a little kid, and I loved Houdini, and escape art. I used to do escape art when I was younger in the city mall, and I was talking to my grandfather about what work was, and he explained to me that work was just something you did for 10 hours a day, every day, and it was horrible. You just had to do it and provide for your family. And as a little kid hearing this, I was just mortified. And this is what my grandfather used to do. He was a typesetter in the newspapers. And I went to work with him for one day and saw like the racks of text all in these wooden boxes and then assembling stuff, and it was just amazing. But I thought I really didn't want to do something for my whole life that I hated, spending 10 hours a day, doing something awful. So I decided, and I don't know if my grandfather meant that, to choose to do something fun for most of my working life. And so I made that decision as a little kid quite early on in the piece. So then I went on my merry way to high school, and I got very, very average marks in high school. I only barely passed high school. Not that I'm encouraging any of you young kids out there to not do well at school, but don't be pressured, I think, if you go through the school system and struggle. Because it doesn't necessarily define you as a person. I found my way after I left school. So I started a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering, and I lasted a year doing that, and then found I really wanted to do something else. I went to a careers counsellor and said, this is really not for me, what else could I possibly do? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I'd like to be a magician. And they thought that was relatively unrealistic. So I found something halfway between where I was and the arts, which was industrial design they recommended for me to do. So I couldn't draw at this stage, so they sent me off to do a TAFE course, and I did like a folio prep course, and eventually got into industrial design at RMIT down in Melbourne, which I did, and that was a really great introduction and help for me to kind of use my skills. This was a gentleman that I was exposed to while I was at TAFE. His name is Stellark. He's an Australian inventor and crazy psychonaut, loves robotics, all sorts of cybernetic stuff, but he gave me a talk, and a lot of his work has kind of inspired me in my work. But this was what TAFE was great for. It was exposure to kind of avant-garde elements and random intellectual stuff. But Stellark was one of my favourite people from back then. Then I did industrial design, and industrial design is very product-based. It's all about manufacturing and things, and I found the most important thing that I was interested in during the whole course was actually people, because we're the people that use the objects that are designed, and we're the ones that drive the cars, and we're the people that everything's manufactured for. So for me, the most important thing about my design course wasn't the objects that we were making, it was actually the interface and the people that are interacting with it. So a lot of my time spent in design has been learning about the human body and how it works and how it looks. And life drawing for me is like an old tool which has been around for years to learn how to express your ideas on the page. The human body is very beautiful and very intricate, and if you can learn to draw the human body, you can draw anything. So yeah, I came out of university a little bit jaded about manufacturing and wanted to do something with the body. My first job out of university was with the Melbourne Fashion Festival, where I designed a catwalk. And this was the catwalk I designed. It was like a big sloping, slippery slide. So it was in its own way, I suppose, an interactive design. The models were quite terrified of it, but it all went very well, no one fell over. And then this is, I suppose, about the transition from university to getting a proper job. I couldn't find, other than the Melbourne Fashion Festival, a job that would employ me consistently. About the problem I said about having a company that requires creativity all of the time. And I thought I was busy washing dishes to pay my wages or to get by and paying rent, and I just thought there must be a better way than just washing dishes. So I thought I'd be an usher in the cinema, and the Palace Cinemas took me in as an usher down in Melbourne, and I thought that would be a much better way of spending my time. And for me, this was a really important decision, because instead of working in an industry that I wasn't really interested in to do what I wanted to do, I thought, even if it's in a small way, to start working in the film industry as an usher. So that was the kind of key for me standing here now and having done what I've done, was making that decision. Ever so, it might have seemed a really small thing, but to stand like in that theatre and watch films all day, it was awesome as a part-time job, and it exposed me to filmmakers. I moved up the ranks in the cinema to be a projectionist and a manager, and started helping run the St Kilda Film Festival. And that then allowed me to meet filmmakers and start being involved in a creative way with other creative people. And I found that I had a talent for helping people make things and see their vision on camera. So for me, this was really important to have some kind of foot in the door. And for me, it was the ushering at a cinema. I then progressed from that after a few years, and I got a job at Walt Disney, animating, as you can see, The Lion King. Timon, I worked for Walt Disney for many years, and this was another hard lesson for me. It was incredibly difficult to get into Walt Disney, to begin the process of learning to be an animator and drawing. But someone's got to do it, I figured, and that's why I applied. It's kind of like an unattainable job. It's like it's the thing you kind of dream about. You're, I could be an animator for Walt Disney, and it's like, well, someone actually has to do it. So if you have any aspirations for doing something that you think is unattainable, for me personally, I think you should go for it, because at the end of the day, there's someone who needs to do those jobs, and if you're really that passionate about it, I managed to do it, and yeah, I think it's important. Walt Disney, however, taught me the trials and tribulations of being a commercial artist, which is that I have my way that I would like to draw Mickey Mouse, but they have their way. And so you learn very quickly in a commercial environment to be creative, but you need to be creative in a way that the company that you're working for wants. They don't want my interpretation of Timon, they want me to draw Timon exactly as he appears in the films. So they kind of break you as an artist, and this was the beginnings of me understanding what I would call aesthetics of a film. Like with Mad Max, there's a certain look to everything, and this was how I started to understand how things looked and what that means in a broader context of filmmaking, because it sets the tone for whatever is being made. Like Mad Max has this really raw, tough kind of feel to it, whereas obviously Disney does not. But I've worked on both of these things as a creative, and managed to turn my style from Timon to the Furiosa on Mad Max, and that's what you need to be able to do as a commercial artist, is kind of stretch your style. This was where I cut my teeth, I suppose you would say, learning prosthetics. This is a show called All Saints, which was made by Channel 7. And I spent many years on this show learning life casting and designing prosthetic effects. We didn't have a very big budget, and I was not trained in this, so I kind of learned on the job. But I was quite proud of this one, so I was trying to get his hand to match the colouring and the hair and everything. And in this sequence, he was getting a nail pulled out of his hand, and there was blood that came out of the hand. And then you see at the back there's a little tube which runs back, and I had my little blood pump at the back to pressurise it. But this was the kind of work that where I learned to, I suppose, on-set etiquette, how a film set works, and all of the different things that you need to do to tell the story. So yeah, I suppose brought this up to say that it's a long road. Like TV is very different to film. It's very fast-paced, so I learned to do things very quickly and just think on my feet a lot and use a lot of cheap methods to make effects, but it was good fun. And then in Sydney, I've kind of just bounced around doing lots of different things. This is a stop motion ad I did for Target. And this was an epic thing. It nearly killed me. It was a stop motion commercial that we shot it for 4 days, and it was just crazy. I don't know if any of you've seen it, but it's I just immersed myself in the local TV and film world, just volunteering my services, working for free sometimes, just to generate connections with people and just kind of get the good word out and try and make myself as useful as possible. But worked on lots of different things like music videos and all sorts, but wasn't too picky, did lots of different stuff early on. And then, as a result of working on one of these things, I got an offer to work on Mad Max Fury Road, because I was working on a short film which was a fashion shoot, and one of the people that happened to be working on it, their boss, or their partner, was the boss on Mad Max, and they put in a good word for me. So I suppose the lesson there is that it's a small industry and word does get around if you do good work. So I started on Mad Max, and this is where I started. This is the workshop in Villawood. You can probably see a little car in the back there, hiding away. But my first job on this was working with the motorbikes. I was working in a motorbike workshop and fitting out the bikes to look like the film. So this was a great environment. This is probably the best workplace I've ever worked in. There was a massive workshop, as you can see, not dissimilar to the space out there, with a nice tall top roof, and we had I think it was about 130 vehicles here all being worked on. Some of the motorbikes, cars, trucks in the background. You can see the beginnings of the war rig in the back there. And what was great about this space was there was a room full of people who were all incredibly talented and loving what they did. Like there was mechanics, there was panel beaters, there were motorbike mechanics, there were painters, there was like the full spectrum of everyone that was involved in the film, all under this one roof, all with a common goal of making this new film. And what was great about it is you could walk around and just see what everyone was up to and compare what you were doing. And if you had any questions or problems with your own project, you could just walk around in this community essentially, and everyone was very willing to divulge the secrets of their trade. I worked with some amazing people, panel beaters particularly, who inspired me, who you could just give a sheet of steel and come back 2 weeks later and they would have a replica car for you. It was just unbelievable, skills that now are kind of not around. But it was, I think, to draw a connection between this space, which I worked in, and the space out there, which has assembled today, it was amazing to be able to just walk out amongst all of these really talented people and cross-pollinate, talk about and see what they did and how it could inform me and what I was doing, and have kind of like a group purpose. And so yeah, I think this was really important, as much as I think today out there is really important. There are a lot of people here today who are of similar minds and are interested in innovation and making cool stuff. And I think you should hopefully make the most of today, going and meeting lots of groovy people out there. This was a focus of the design specifically for the film. This is my mate Mark. He's a really great maker as well. He made this flamethrower. He's very proud of that flamethrower. And Colin Gibson was our production designer, who was basically my boss on the film. He kind of controlled how the film looked. And the way he controlled how the film looked for me was that, and for all of my friends, was he gave us just a wrecking yard full of old cars, basically. There was probably 30, I haven't got a photograph of it, unfortunately, but there was a wrecking yard out the back with maybe 40 or 50 wrecked old classic cars. And we were just told, here's an angle grinder, go shopping. So you can see here Mark's design. He's got some old handlebars off a push bike. These are exhaust pipes off a car. All of the bits and pieces that are involved in this design are all just pieces that have been hacked off vintage cars.
Is that a Morris? I'm sorry, that's
yes it is. Yes it is. So this was kind of how the production designer controlled how the film looked. He gave us, you know, basically a supermarket to work out of. We weren't allowed to use anything new. We were only allowed to use recycled materials. And so in that sense, the designer could never give us drawings of what he wanted anything to look like, because it was all from recycled things. We just had to go out into the boneyard and pick and choose as you would if the film was actually real. So in that sense, my boss Colin is quite a genius. This was one of the bikes this is one of the first bikes which I worked on. This is Yamaha, and yeah, as you can see, the old number plates. I tried to make this one look like it, you know, maybe done over a few cars and had badged the side of his bike with the number plates of all of the cars that he killed or run over. I was trying to change the silhouette of the bike to make it look mean, and to kind of give all of the objects, as we were told in this film, a history. So that's why I used the number plates kind of as badges of, you know, foes that he had killed, to give the bike a sense of history. We originally also went out to Broken Hill to try and shoot in the original film's location, but unfortunately it rained heavily while we were setting up, and it turned the entire place into a flower garden, which was not really what was required for the film. So unfortunately we had to go to Namibia in Africa, or fortunately I should say. But this was another bike. As you can see, it's all pieces of car. That's an old fender on the front of the bike there. This one's just mainly bumper bars, all welded together and put onto the bike. But that's a good example of just repurposing things. This was actually on location in Namibia. I'm sure most of you have seen the film, if not. This is a different clan of people, as you can see. This bike is all of the boys in town. These are all the tough guys who own all of the fuel. And then these were the ladies out in the sand dunes who were living kind of as nomads. So these were two different briefs for aesthetics. This was all chrome and rubber. And then the ladies out in the desert, where it was more fabric technology, weaving, more told to use more kind of strapping and technologies that would be, you know, you don't have welders and things out in the sand. Everything was kind of a little bit more handmade. This I'm also quite proud of the fuel tank on this one, which I knitted out of electrical cable. And then this thing. After I'd done a couple of the bikes, my boss was impressed with kind of how I was going and gave me this project. It was, it had already been made basically by a sculptor called Michael Allman, and it was my job to make it work. Michael had done a basic kind of layout of everything, but the guitar didn't work and the flamethrower didn't work, and there was no real electrics in it. So my job was to take his design and build it so that it actually worked. George, the director, George Miller, was very keen to have everything in the production kind of practical. So just a prop guitar wasn't what he wanted. He wanted an actual real guitar that played music that they could patch through the sound system on the truck on the day, and actually for it to actually really shoot flames out of it as well. So that was a very challenging project. I had to learn a lot about electric guitars very quickly, and that was pretty crazy. So that's it, and on location, being played by Iota on the top of the doof wagon. That's it. Okay, and now the claw. There's a long history to the claw, as we affectionately called it. There was many designs done before I was involved, but she was a key character in the film, and so there was a lot of work that had been done. I think when I started there was 5 or 6 versions that had been made, and it was my job kind of to amalgamate all of these previous versions and take all of the good elements of what had been done before and create a new design that the director and the production designer and Charlize Theron was happy with. But this was the first bit of information that Colin gave me. He wanted, this guy is from Rwanda, and as part of the civil war there has lost some of his arm, but showed like kind of the simplicity of what could be used. He basically just needs to eat and smoke his cigarettes. So we wanted maybe to strip it down. A lot of the previous versions of the arm had been very complex, kind of like cyberpunk kind of stuff. Let's flick through. This was the drawing that I was given, which I needed to work to. This was Peter Pound, the illustrator. This was one of the only drawings I got given to work from to make the arm. So it's not a lot of information, but it certainly gives a concept of what they wanted, but not in a practical sense. So like, you can draw anything, but to actually physically make it so that the actress could wear it and have it work that was my job. So this was one of the precursor ones that was made. This was designed and built by the Weta Studios in New Zealand. This is my boss Bert wearing it. As you can see, his arm kind of goes through the design down to a control handle underneath, and which was going to puppeteer the actual arm itself. If we were going to use this design, we would have wrapped his hand and the controller in green fabric to kind of block it out later. But it was quite heavy, and it was a little bit off brief because there was a lot of manufactured pieces in it specifically for it. A lot of this stuff was not actually reclaimed materials, it was made for it. So George loved some of the elements of this and wanted me to redesign it with this other concept in mind as well, the simplifying it, because this was too busy. I was just trying to get a balance between all of the different versions. This was Bert, my boss's version as well. Everyone had a go. There was lots of people having a go at this because it was quite a hard project. And this was Bert's version. If you notice the tip of the claw arm at the top is the perforations, which ended up in the final design. So kind of all of the different elements of these designs, I took the best elements to end up in the final thing. So yeah, see the perforations in the end of Bert's design, and then the final one here. I kept that element because it was quite good. Okay, so this was the Weta designed arm, and then this was my first version of simplifying it into something that was usable. So that's me doing a full-scale sketch, which I was then going to lay everything out on. So this is me working, just starting to put together, found elements, bits of pliers and rope and elements to start patching it together. I suppose this is just illustrating my work process as well. I like doing a sketch first and then kind of developing it. Just annealing the tools so we could work with them and soften them and start working with them. Starting to like push things together. Again, like little details like this, because everything's second-hand, someone had described their initials into the tips of these pliers. So again, giving the work a history and layering, which if you've seen the film, you'll see the immense amount of work that has gone into like the history of all of these characters and the depth of kind of all of just the layering in the film. And this, putting all of this and keeping all of this detail was really important to both Colin and George. So that's close to completion there. The mechanism on this I designed to try and have the actress be able to operate it herself. She also needed to be able to use handguns, do all sorts of things with it. So this design I tried to incorporate as much as I could. This was the beginnings of the harness system to incorporate the design into her costume. You can see where this bit of black tape runs around the back. This was where a cord was going to run across to her other shoulder. Like there, that's after I built the harness system, which would make it so she could operate it herself. If she hunches the shoulders forward like this, it will shorten the cable, which will open the jaws. So this was the design. And that was the final piece. So I have the final piece up here if you want to have a look later. So then I had to make one in between these two designs. I had the wetter one and my one, and George still wasn't happy, so I had to come up with the middle design, which you can see at the front here. So I began putting pieces together, trying to make it look mechanical. So it was like less like a hand and more like a machine. Cladding the palm, changing the wrist mechanism so I could incorporate things like gas struts and stuff, and making it so the actress would have as much freedom of movement as possible. And then these were the two versions which I presented to George, which these were the ones that he chose as the final design. I then had to manufacture many of them because we were shooting with 3 film crews simultaneously. Which meant we had the main unit, the stunt unit, and sometimes inserts being shot at the same time. So some of these are soft versions made of leather and and rubber, along with the steel version. There's Charlize wearing the design. And I have to say, wrapping up kind of thing, that I'm very proud of this piece, just because it's, for me, symbolic of violence against women worldwide, and it's kind of a bit of a slap in the face of misogyny. The whole film is kind of a bit of a feminist text, and I felt really honoured to work with Charlize, who is a great mentor she takes her job very seriously as a role model for women, and I think she did a great job. And I was proud to have helped her play that character convincingly, and yeah, there we go. This is in addition. As you can see, obviously she has not actually got her arm removed, so we used a green screen glove, as you can see in this slide here. And then there was digital effects added later. So this final shaft piece, the drive shaft in the middle, was done digitally afterwards, but it was the only bit that was added. George was a big fan of minimising any effects that were in the film, wanting to do most of it by hand. And again, this is a stunt woman who was playing opposite Charlize, just illustrating that I had to accommodate these designs to fit many, many, many different people. There was even a male driver at one point who had to wear everything, so it all had to be modifiable for lots of different people to use. And more importantly, these are my mates who helped me build a lot of this stuff. And again, I think this is to reiterate the community sense here. I myself have a particular skill set, and every one of you out there have your own special talents. For me, these are my 2 mates, Ronnie and Chris, who have their particular talents, and working as a team, we feel like we're pretty much invincible and we could make anything that anyone asked of us. But individually, it's a bit more daunting. So, I don't know, I just think there's a lot of talent out there today. You should make some friends and make some stuff.